We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. If you want to donate to this college football rebel outpost, just hit the $ where you make a comment, and I'll get you super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome into the studio, everybody. Welcome on into the studio that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls later in the show. Yuck, 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 yuck. I finally got what I wanted in the 2024 playoffs. Selfishly speaking, I finally got what I wanted after years and years of pounding on the table. I wanted an expanded playoffs. I love the 12-team playoffs. I love pretty much everything about it. I know other people complain about the seeding and complain that the top four conference championships would get a bye and it wouldn't be perfect and we couldn't legislate against blowouts in the playoffs, and you never can. And now we are heading down a road which we're not going to be able to come back from. Now, for many of you, for like 95% of the PATC family, you understand the difference between Greg Flugar reporting something, giving you the peek around the corner, the difference between that and what does Greg Flugar want to happen. Most of the time, there is a gigantic difference between the two. On September 9th of 2024, we did a live show at the beginning of the college football season. I think it was week 2. I came on live and said, oh my goodness, we got it from 2 different sources. The Big Ten is going to push for 4 automatic qualifying spots. 4, 4, 4. They may settle for 3, but the number they want 4. And then I talked about the new ways of flex weekend, playing games, conference tournaments. We talked about all that on a live show September 9th because somebody behind the curtain, the chatter behind the curtain, opened the door for us to peek through. We saw the future. We reported to you all. And I got absolutely hammered. Absolutely hammered. I'm not going to show you the DMs that I got from some particular family members of the PATC. Those sitting in ACC country and Big 12 country saying, Greg, you're crazy. This can't happen. It shouldn't happen. There's going to be lawsuits, Greg. And I had to come back and say, this is not what I want. This is definitely not what I want. But in this show, on this National Live College Football Show, it is my job to give you guys an accurate peek around the corner. We told you the motives why the Big Ten is doing what they're doing, pushing this along, and the SEC. But mostly it's the Big Ten action. We gave you the motivations. In fact, I listened to Pat Forte and Wetzel, and I listened to a little bit of their podcast, became on live, and they were rallying the cause that this is horrible. What the Big Ten and SEC is trying to do, the richer getting richer, trying to get 4 automatic qualifying spots. They're calling the shots. The Big Ten and the SEC are calling the shots. It's why we named the show Big Ten, SEC, calling the shots. They talked about how there is no leadership right now in college football. That there's not very good people running this college football enterprise. They still danced around the issue. They still did not quite get there. So let me get there for you once again. As we said on September 9th, 2024, the motivations for this new college football playoffs, more automatic qualifiers, a lot more automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and the SEC. The motivations is the media partners. Now, we're going to go through the Ross Dellinger article. We're going to go through the whole article. I'm going to comment about everything I read in that article. There's a couple spots in that article that is not ringing true at all. Mostly the part about ESPN, some executives not quite publicly wanting to support this, not quite maybe on board with this new 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC. This part in that article saying they may not feel, they may alienate some parts of the country. Baloney, as my father would say. Baloney. That is a bunch of baloney. This is what the media partners want. This is what Fox, CBS, NBC want. This is what ESPN wants. Remember, they're paying out a whole lot of money for SEC content, for Big Ten content. In fact, last year was the first year that ESPN, ABC, Disney was paying out the big moolah. The first year of their new media contract. So they're paying out all this money. They want something in return, baby. They want something. They want to max out. They want to max out the possible value of the regular season games. And to do that, you have to ensure automatic qualifiers. You've got to ensure as many conference games means something to the playoff race in November, in late October. And Petiti and Sankey, of course, they're doing the bidding of their bosses, the media partners, and their presidents of the universities who get these big old checks. No, unfortunately, this is the road we've been going since the threats of the Big Ten and the SEC worked. When the Big Ten and the SEC threatened to pull away, and they weren't going to pull away. There wasn't going to be a breakaway. We told you there wasn't going to be a breakaway. It was impossible for there to be a breakaway until when we get closer to 2031. I have said the same thing over and over again for 3 years. And there's still about 2% of the PATC family out there who don't quite get what I've been saying. The breakaway is a real possibility. The Big Ten and the SEC breaking away is a real possibility in 2029, 2030, 2031. It was never going to happen for 25. It was never going to happen for 26. But that threat, the breakaway, made ACC and the Big 12 bend the knee. And they gave the Big Ten and the SEC all this governance power. All of this power. Almost all power, not quite all power, when it comes to formatting the college football playoffs in 2026 and beyond. You remember those reports that came out of Dennis Dodd, CBS, Ross Dellinger at that time, Yahoo Sports, Brett McMurphy and others, Heather Dinich. There was reports out there that said the Big Ten and the SEC in Notre Dame, Bavacqua. Once Bavacqua became the athletic director, the official athletic director of Notre Dame, that those three entities were having meetings together, talking about a future breakaway. Maximum pressure was put on the Big 12. Maximum pressure was put on the ACC. Maximum pressure was put on the G5 to bend the knee, to give all the power, almost all power, to the SEC and the Big Ten. So this is not just a story of greed from the Big Ten and the SEC. This is a story of capitulation. This is also a story of the Big 12 and the ACC not letting them totally off the hook, making sure that they are institutionalized, that there is a separation between themselves and other FBS conferences. This is the third, in reality, this is the third separation point. And there's no coming back from this. First of all, there was the governance, right? The Big Ten, the SEC, if they could agree on the changes, they controlled the votes. They were given governance power. That's number one. Number two, college football playoff distribution money. Starting in 2026, the SEC and the Big Ten, all the schools in both those conferences, we're going to get more money per team under the 2026 college football playoff distribution model than the Big 12 and the ACC teams. And of course, more than the G5. That's number two. Now we have our third, what I would call institutional separation, where there's going to be 4 automatic qualifiers for the SEC and the Big Ten, 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, and 1 for G5, and potentially 1 to 3 at-large bids, depending on if we're going to a 14-team playoff or a 16-team playoff. This is the third strike. There is an institutional separation now between the Big Ten and the Big 12, between the SEC and the ACC. It's not just about dollar figures. It's not just about the money. It's not just about exposure. Now it's about access. An automatic access, increased access for Big Ten and SEC schools over other FBS schools. I get the motivation. It's money. I get the motivation. But as a college football fan, this stinks. This is terrible. Now, a lot of you are going to disagree with me. A lot of you are going to agree with me. I know we're going to be on different sides of this issue. And I completely understand it. We explain the reasons why. For example, the Big Ten, the Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to have this scheduling agreement. They're going to make a whole lot more money just on their regular season scheduling agreement between the two conferences. Then they're going to have play-in games, multiple play-in games. And they're going to make more money on that. And in return, they're probably going to have to lengthen the current media contract that they have with their media partners. In other words, the Big Ten, they're probably going to have to lengthen it a couple of years with Fox. Same thing with the SEC and ESPN. They're going to get more money, but they're going to have to sign their names on the dotted line to extend the current media contract. They're going to make a whole lot more money. They are. I don't know how much. We're going to find that out together. And again, it is the commissioner's job to make as much money as possible for the institutions. But this is the third institutional divide. Conference divide. This is the third one. Governance, money distribution model, and now access. And I don't think there's any way to put the toothpaste back in the tube. Just wait, because we are going to get a year. I know there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people out there in the college football space. A lot of podcasts, a lot of YouTube saying, well, there's never going to be a Big 12 team. There's never going to be an ACC team that's ever going to contend for the national championship. Ever again. So, Greg, this is no big deal. There was always going to be 4 SEC teams that make the playoffs. Always going to be 4 Big 10 teams that make a 14-team playoff. Again, this is no big deal. I would disagree. First of all, forever is a very long time. Second, I will wait for the day when a fourth, let me put it to you this way. When a sixth place Big Ten team defeats a third place Big Ten team in a play-in game, and that sixth place Big Ten team makes the playoffs, and that particular Big Ten team had gotten beaten by a Big 12 opponent earlier in the season by 3 touchdowns. Something like that is going to happen. Something is going to be clear where a third place team in the ACC or the Big 12 should be in the playoffs. But because of the automatic qualifiers handed out to the SEC and the Big Ten, it ain't going to happen. Sometime down the road, a scenario like that is going to unfold. I don't believe in these automatic qualifiers. I understand the reasons why. We gave you the peek around the corner. We gave you the accurate peek around the corner, which is important because that's what we do here. But this automatic qualifying stuff, it isn't competition. It just doesn't feel good. It isn't right. I'm all for the conference champion, of course, get an automatic bid. I don't care what their record is. I'm all for conference champions getting a first round bye or having the ability to get a first round bye. But having 4 automatic qualifying spots, automatically, it don't sit right with me. It never has. And now we are going down that road. And this is the worst part of it. This is the worst part of it. This is the worst part of it. There's no coming back from this. I mean, there's no like this power that the Big Ten, the SEC has is only going to get bigger and more powerful. Now they have a whole lot of advantages. They've already had the advantages. And some of that well-earned, by the way. Some of that well-earned. I'm not sitting here. The SEC is the most powerful, valuable content in college. I get it. I get the wealth of the Big Ten. I get it. But the power is only going to grow because of this. The ability for the SEC and the Big Ten to actually do a breakaway in 29, in 2030, in 2031, the ability to actually pull it off is only going to grow. It's not going to lessen. It's going to get bigger. The threat of lawsuits, the threat of, come on. At some point, when you've got all the power entrenched, and by the way, it wasn't like they were given the power. They have the governance power. Now they can do this. And once that gets entrenched, once we wake up every morning during the 2026 season, we go, well, top 4 SEC, top 4 Big Ten, top 2 ACC, top 2 Big 12, G5 gets a one bid, and then we're going to have 1 or 2 or 1 or 3 at-large bids. When this gets entrenched every single day, it's not going to seem like much of a leap anymore, and suddenly the chances of the Big 12 and the ACC getting more of a distribution a bigger percentage of the distribution model is going to lessen and lessen, and more money, there's going to be more attraction. And the Big Ten, the SEC, they're going to expand one more time, and then the breakaway. I think the breakaway is increasingly, the chances of it happening are going to increase every single year from here on out. I don't know, maybe because I'm 56 years old, but I do not want a smaller college football universe. I want a bigger college football universe. I understand the advantages that the SEC has, and they're going to have them for the next 50, 60, 70, 200 years. I understand the advantages of the Big Ten. They're going to have them for many, 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 many decades, long after I am gone. But to institutionalize, to make this certified, to absolutely make it official that there is a separation now. The college football universe is going to get smaller, not bigger. And for that, I'm sad. I really am. College football is pageantry, it's history, it's passion. It's the college football fans that make this sport work. It's not the leaders. It's not the leaders. These guys aren't leading nothing. You've seen what they've done with this House versus... You all know where this should have gone years ago. This should have went to a collective bargaining agreement. This should have been the protection of labor. And then the owners, the conferences, they would have, of course, protections. And that's where this thing should have went years ago. We're not witnessing leadership here. We're witnessing more and more and more of a power grab that in the end of the day is not going to help this sport out. It's not going to grow opportunities for the student athletes. It's not going to grow fan bases. It's not going to grow viewership numbers. It's not going to grow anything except the separation. These conferences are pretty good at building moats around them. They're pretty good at building walls around them. They're not all that good in growing the sport, though. You guys know I have been this is one of the reasons why this is the most unpopular college football YouTube channel in the country. I have been very disappointed in Sankey and Petiti. And I will continue to be disappointed in both of them. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. You're free to disagree. I'm not going to do a roll call. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Again, we're going to go to the Ross Dellinger article. None of this is a surprise to peek around the corner. Everything that basically was reported, we reported in September 9th on a live show. A couple months ago, we said this was a fait accompli. And it is going to all happen, and it's going to happen soon, officially, according to the Ross Dellinger reporting. We're going to go through it in a moment here. Monopoly, lesson number 1, don't underestimate the other guy's greed. Thank you for the super chat. Monopoly, thank you so very much. Don't underestimate the other guy's greed. And again, I think there's a lot of blame to be put on the Big 12 and the ACC as well. Anyways, let's get to the, thank you, Monopoly. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Let's get to the article because there are some out there who haven't read the article. It came out last night. Sources, the SEC, the Big Ten, building momentum to further expand the college football playoff to 14 or 16 teams. Last spring, during intense and at times heated negotiations over the future college football playoff, leaders of the Big Ten and the SEC threatened to create their own postseason system if they were not granted a majority of the playoff revenue and full authority over the playoff format. In the end, executives of the 10 FBS leagues and Notre Dame signed a memorandum of understanding handing control over the college football's two richest conferences. Soon, they are expected to exercise that control. Within the SEC and the Big Ten, momentum is building to further expand the playoff to 14 or 16 teams. And I think we are all basically in agreement that at some point we are going to go to 16. Maybe sooner rather than later, but we are going to go to 16. Assign multiple automatic qualifiers per league, as many as 4 each for themselves, and finalize a scheduling arrangement together that may fetch millions in additional revenue from TV partners, sources told Yahoo Sports. The playoff format change would clear the way for SEC administrators to finally make the long-discussed move to play 9 regular season conference games and would trigger perhaps all 4 power leagues to overhaul their conference championship weekend. These ideas and concepts, previously reported by Yahoo Sports as possibilities, are now serious agenda items within the highest governing bodies of the SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, and ACC, according to officials from each of those leagues. The 11 members of the CFP Management Committee, the 10 FBS Conference Commissioners, and Notre Dame's athletic director were contacted for this story, many of them confirming the existence of these potential ideas, but declining specific comment on the matter. PATC money shot number 1. Final decisions are expected in the coming weeks. So the 2026 college football playoff format, along with the possible scheduling agreement, and we'll get to that. We're going to circle back to that here later on because these are tied together. Because, look, the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to agree to a scheduling agreement without having, the security of more automatic qualifying spots in the playoffs. So all this stuff is tied together. All of it. Final decisions are expected in the coming weeks. This is not going to linger month after month after month. The SEC and the Big Ten athletic directors will meet Wednesday, 2 days from now, in New Orleans for the second time in the last 5 months. The Big 12 athletic directors are expected to discuss the future playoff format at meetings this week. And the ACC athletic directors, as well as the presidents, met last week in Charlotte, North Carolina. The CFP Management Committee is scheduled to meet February 25th in Dallas, where the SEC and the Big Ten could present ideas for the future format, a consensus recommendation the 2 leagues may establish this week in New Orleans. In other words, on February 25th, the SEC and the Big Ten could present their format change for everyone to see and look at, and They try to build consensus, although they don't need the consensus. The SEC and the Big Ten's control and possible proposal. According to most who have viewed the Memorandum of Understanding from last spring, the SEC and the Big Ten hold sole discretion on the future college football playoff format starting in 26, the beginning of the college football playoff's new 6-year television agreement with ESPN that runs through the 2031 playoff. The agreement grants the league's decision-makers powers over the format, but directs them to have meaningful consultation and collect input from other conferences before making their decision. Well, isn't that nice? Meaningful consultation and collect input from other conferences. Leaders in each conference have spent the last several weeks evolving a format idea, multiple automatic qualifiers per league, into a more realistic proposal. The 14 or 16 team model would grant 4 automatic qualifiers each to the SEC and the Big Ten, 2 each to the ACC and the Big 12, and 1 to the highest ranked group of 5 champion. It includes 1 or 3 at-large spots, one of those intended for Notre Dame if it finishes ranked inside the top 14. A guarantee specifically designated for the Irish that is part of the CFP memorandum. Officials describe the 14-team format as a 4-4-2-2-1+1 model, in which the top 2 seeds receive first-round byes. There would be no byes in a 16-team structure. In either, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee's role is greatly diminished. The committee, its future, as the memorandum stipulates, also controlled by the SEC and the Big Ten, would presumably seed 1 through 14 or 16 based directly on its top 25 rankings. How does everyone else feel? Many administrators in the Big 12 and the ACC are not in support of a format with so many automatic qualifiers designated for the SEC and the Big Ten, and many of them have, at least subtly, taken aim at the format over the last several months. Earlier this week, the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips told Yahoo Sports the ACC has not cemented a position on a format, but there needs to be fairness and access to the championship, he said. It needs to be a true championship, not artificial, not an invitational. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark says his conference has been exploring predictive analysis on what different playoff models would mean for conference participation if applied in recent history of the postseason. I'll be armed with data, he told Yahoo Sports. Meanwhile, the group of 5 leaders are prepared to fight to potentially expand upon their 1 automatic access spot, according to comments from the American Athletic Conference Commissioner Tim Pernetti to Yahoo Sports. College football is stronger than ever, Pernetti said. As the CFP evolves, we have responsibility to student athletes, the integrity of the game, our fans, to build a future that includes expanded access for every conference. In other words, the group of 5, they're going to keep their 1 automatic spot through 2031. If the playoff format goes to 16, obviously the group of 5 is going to be pushing for 2 automatic qualifying spots. Don't think it's going to happen. At the very least, the group of 5 will keep its 1 automatic spot through 2031 as part of the 6-year extension with ESPN. While the conferences agree to cede decision-making powers on format to the SEC and the Big Ten, there are certain agreed-upon guarantees of any future format, an automatic inclusion of the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, the protection of independent Notre Dame, a field of 12 of 14 teams. What is ESPN's role? Another important entity involved in the conversations is the company paying $1.3 billion annually to the college football playoff for the rights to broadcast the playoffs from 26 to 31. Though they have not publicly commented, ESPN executives have expressed to at least some college leaders apprehension about a format that provides such lopsided automatic access. As one power broker put it, you're going to alienate part of the country. ESPN's long-form television agreement, the 6-year extension laid out in the memorandum of the understanding, is not yet finalized, but is expected to be completed later this spring, sources told Yahoo Sports. There is not expected to be any new television revenue if the field is expanded to 14, as the figure is included in the memorandum. If the field is expanded to 16, however, it may require negotiations from the leagues for more revenue. A 14-team playoff would feature 2 more first-round games, already clogging television windows during the 3rd week in December, when the college football playoff competes against the NFL. A 16-team bracket means an additional 4 more games, 8 first-round games instead of 4. The data and revenue. The 14-team model, 4-4-2-2-1 plus 1, aligns mostly with the conference strength over the last 11 years of the college football playoff existence, according to data compiled by Yahoo Sports. Since the 2014 playoff, the SEC has had 52 teams ranked inside the top 14 of the college football playoff rankings heading into conference championship weekend, or about 4.7 teams per year. The Big Ten, 4.6. The Big 12, 2.1. The ACC, 1.8. Notre Dame, 0.45. The Group of 5, 0.27. The college football playoff executives use similar data points to establish the playoffs' new revenue distribution model. We've been through that 1,000 times. The SEC and the Big Ten each receive 29% of the revenue, ACC 17%, Big 12 14.7%. The ramifications. One of the most heated debates within college athletics recently is the SEC's conference schedule. The league, the self-proclaimed king of the sport, has for more than 2 years now seriously explored moving from 8 to 9 league games. However, conference administrators have remained split on the matter. There is a fear in sustaining more defeats, which could cost playoff spots. Administrators also are requesting more revenue from ESPN, perhaps as much or more than $5 million a school annually to play an extra league game. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. A new playoff model guaranteeing the conference 4 spots satisfies one of the 2 issues. Right? Security. No more fear of sustaining more defeats that could cost playoff spots. Not when you have 4 automatic qualifying spots for the SEC. As for the other, officials from ESPN and the conference have spent months discussing additional revenue, negotiations that many expect to soon reach an agreement. So everything is coming soon here. All the dots are being connected. They're all tied together. It's all going to get done soon, according to sources telling Yahoo Sports. A ninth SEC conference game would then set in motion a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten, which itself already plays 9 league games. The scheduling agreement, though still in discussion stages, would pit SEC and Big Ten teams against one another in annual games to be sold as a separate television package. Though ESPN and Fox already own the home games of the SEC and the Big Ten schools respectively, the scheduling agreement, if it generates big-time matchups, could be worth annually well into 8 figures for the leagues to presumably split. Last July, from the Big Ten football media days, Commissioner Tony Petitti told Yahoo Sports, if leaders get the postseason right, his league and others could then have the ability to play stronger non-conference matchups. This is all connected. PATC money shot number 2 of the article. Number 1, it's all going to happen real soon. These final decisions going to be made in weeks. PATC money shot number 2 is it's all connected. All these decisions are connected. I think what Tony Petitti is trying to argue here is, look, these automatic qualifying spots, it's not only going to help us and the SEC, but maybe it's going to help the Big 12 and the ACC, but not because they know they're going to get 2 in, and now they can schedule bigger non-conference games between the both of them. Possibly, maybe, could be. I'm very interested to hear what you guys got to say on that. Think about it like steps to a recipe that in the end will supply the 2 conferences with millions more in revenue at a time when college sports moves into direct revenue sharing with athletes. 1, change the postseason to guarantee spots. 2, assure the SEC to move the 9 games. 3, strike the scheduling agreement. There is a 4th step. Remake Conference Championship Weekend. PATC money shot number 3. And we've also talked about this for months here at Peek Around the Corner. Under the models being discussed, each power conference would need to establish the way in which they qualify their teams for the automatic berths. In either multiple automatic qualifying playoff proposal, conference championship games likely become less valuable, and a reimagined championship weekend may feature conference playing games for the automatic berths, something Yahoo Sports reported in December. These discussions, though preliminary, are happening at the highest levels of conference leadership. Could the SEC and the Big Ten have guaranteed 4 spots, pit their 3rd best team against the 6th, and their 4th best team against the 5th, and on-campus playing games to the CFP? Would they advance the top 2 seeds automatically into the college football playoff, or would they still play a title game, or would they match their top seed against their 8th place finisher? The games could fetch millions more in additional revenue from television partners in the Big 12 and the ACC. Similar conversations are being had. So last year in the Big 10, it was, what was it? Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Penn State. Number 3, Indiana in the Big 10 standings. 4, Ohio State. And I believe 5 and 6 was what? Illinois and Iowa? I think it was Illinois and Iowa. So Illinois and Iowa would have had a shot in playing games against Indiana, Ohio State, something like that. And that's about it. That's about it. I think we've gone through most of the article, most of what's important anyways. Holy smokes. Again, not a surprise to the PATC family. It's just, we're not going to be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And that's what scares me the most. There is going to be, look, let's be honest. Let's be honest. In a couple of years, like this, when this happens in 2026, 2027, there's going to be even more incentive, even more pressure, even more inertia for, just for an example, the top brands of the ACC to be looking to want to jump into the SEC, into the Big Ten. The separation is just going to grow and grow and grow. And we're going to have a divided college football landscape. And I don't know, there's nothing that anybody can do about it. I mean, it's all set in motion. It has been for months and months after the SEC and the Big Ten got out of all the governance power, the distribution model. I'm going to open up the phone lines. Let me know what you're thinking here. Rock and rant. Being mad at Sankey and Petiti is like being mad at the leopard for eating your face. Let's their bosses, President Big Ten, off the hook. Shame. Thank you, Rock and Rant, for becoming a member for 13 months. I do very much appreciate it. You're right. It's the presidents and it's the media companies, the presidents that are leading the charge on this. Thank you so much, Rock and Rant. Hereby officially knighted, cloak, and dagger. Gorb, sorry I'm late again. I don't know when the Big 12, ACC, Notre Dame are going to wise up and combine their assets to pool their power to combat the Big 10, the SEC. Being Oliver asking for more isn't a viable business model. Again, Notre Dame was with the Big Ten and the SEC in all this. They were, Bavacqua was in those meetings of threatening to pull away, trying to figure out what the future would look like. Notre Dame is not going to fight for the ACC. They've been drinking the ACC's milkshake. They're not going to fight for it. There isn't anything. I don't mean to sound so like doom and gloom, but the train is on the tracks. It's been on the tracks for a long time, and it's just picking up speed. There's no more stopping it. You can't stop it. Now, I get it. I'm a college football fan. I see the SEC dominating. I see the Big Ten dominating. They're going to dominate more. They're going to win more football games. They have the advantages. Just like the Big 12 would dominate G5 schools, and the ACC would dominate G5 schools, and some of the top G5 conferences are going to dominate some of the lower G5. We all know this. But when it becomes so automatic, when the access becomes so automatic, when the changes become institutionalized, you can't come back from that. We're not going to be able to come back from this. So, yes, most of the time, the SEC is going to have 4 teams qualify in a 14-team playoff. Most of the time, maybe even 5. I get it. I see the statistics. I know what they say. They ring true. It's just you're institutionalizing it now. You're making it official. Different access for different conferences. I mean, we got the NCAA basketball. We got a lot more teams. We got 300 some teams. We have automatic spots for conference champions. But there can be a wide variance on how many ACC teams are going to make it this year versus 6 years from now. Same with every other conference. Can you imagine locking in a particular number of automatic qualifiers for the NCAA basketball tournament? That's probably coming next. Yikes. It's just when you go there, you can't come back. There's no way on God's green earth. Thank you, Gorb, for the super chat. Thank you for your generosity, Rock and Rant. Appreciate it. There's no way on God's green earth that the Big Ten and the SEC are ever going to give up the power, the more additional power, more additional access. They're never going to give that up. It's always going to be either keep it like it is or more, and more. Curtis, there is no going back. The conference playing games is, if anything, the most exciting to me. These playing games after a great opportunity to make the regular season much more important. And a lot of people would agree with Curtis, a Michigan fan. Right? Now, instead of battling to try to get to the top 2 spots of the Big Ten, now you're battling to try to get maybe to the top 6 spots. Right? 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5. And if you lose that play-in game, you might still have an outside shot at making an S&at-large team. You're making the regular season more important for that conference. I get it. I completely understand it, and I explained all of this when we were the first to break the story that the Big Ten was going to go for 4 automatic qualifiers. And then the play-in games, they're going to get a lot of viewership, a lot of money. Hopefully, these student athletes are going to get some of that money playing in these games. Hopefully. I get it. I completely understand the motivation, the dollars and the cents of it. But I'm telling you, I'm just telling you, the first time, I'm just going to give an example. The ACC, 2026. Miami, Clemson, top 2 teams. And Florida State is team number 3. And they all finish 11-1, whatever. Florida State does not qualify for the championship game. Or the ACC doesn't have a playing game. They just, whatever the reason why, Florida State is out. They're not one of the top 3 qualifiers. But that 4th place team in the SEC or that 4th place team in the Big Ten, whoever gets that automatic qualifying spot, however they get it, and there's a consensus that they haven't played as well as Florida State has. I'm just giving an example. Boy, oh boy. We are going to have problems. We are going to have issues. But once this gets started, we're not going to go back. Numbskull News, the Big 12 gets 2. I'm good. And again, statistically speaking, thank you, Numbskull News, for the super chat. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Curtis, Big Ten guy, he likes it. Numbskull News, TCU Horned Frog. He's good. He's good with 2. And I get it because statistically speaking, it's probably a good move for the Big 12. Because they've been averaging, what was it again? 1.8 teams. If you would have had a 14-team playoff all this while. I get all of that. But again, it's something about you can't go back after you do this. This is it. Once this happens, we're not going back. In the institutional separation between the ACC and the SEC, there's already a separation. We get it. The resources, the money, the exposure, how much both those conferences get talked about on the Disney channels, on ABC, on ESPN. We all get it. There's a difference between the SEC and the ACC. But once you change the access, the automatic access, the automatic qualifiers, once you change it, there's no going back. And the ACC will forever be considered not what the SEC is. No matter how good a football season they put together, no matter how good an excellent job a couple of those ACC football programs put together in a season, just because of the institutional differences in playoff access, you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And then let's be honest here. Let's just be honest. Let's be blunt. Stormy Cyclone, I'm good with 2, but something has to be written in that 3 is possible under the right conditions. Well, you can get in that large bid. The large bids, a Big 12 can get in that large bid. A Big 10 can get a 5th one. You're going to have at least 1 or 3 at large bids. If it's a 14-team playoff, it's going to be 1 at large. If it's a 16-team, it's going to be 3 at large. And now, before this year, when we talked about it, when I talked about this on September 9th, when then I did a live show on this, I got hammered by you all Big 12 fans. I got hammered by you all. Not all of you, but most of you hammered me for even bringing up the possibility that the Big 10 was going for 4. And we had that story. Now, after seeing 1 year play out, and then going back and looking at the statistics over the last 11 years, now Big 12 fans are like, okay, we'll settle for 2. Get us 2. Get us 2 and we're good. I just think there's a lot of, I just think there is a lot of us who know that this is going to happen. There's no more fighting it. There's no more rallying. There's no more rally cry. There's nothing. It's a fait accompli, as we said a couple months ago. We reported that all this is a fait accompli. It's happening. The Big Ten is going to get exactly what they want. Everything. They wanted 4. Their media partners wanted 4. They wanted more playing. They wanted to have a whole shebang, right? Not just a conference championship game, but they want the whole thing. They want to satisfy NBC, CBS. They all want to have one big game. They want not to have to worry about their losses. They want to have this schedule with the SEC. The SEC wants to have these games with the Big Ten. ESPN wants to have a Michigan at Georgia game. ESPN wants Big Ten consumers, Big Ten fan bases to watch SEC games at home, SEC country. Their advertisers want that to happen. They want Big Ten country to come back to ESPN a few times a year to watch a Big Ten SEC football game. All the economics, all the consolidation, all the power, it's all leading us down this road. And now we're not going to be able to turn back. I'm just warning you all, we're not going to be able to turn back from this. And again, I will say this. The ACC, you had a kumbaya moment. Florida State and Clemson still haven't gotten out of the courts yet. But the motivations for Florida State, for Clemson, for North Carolina, for Miami, for a couple other ACC schools to make that jump into the Big Ten, into the SEC, boy, if there is any opportunity in the future, they are going to jump. And then that's going to lead to more separation, and that's probably going to lead to a breakaway. A breakaway. All right, phone lines, we're going to open it up. Open up the phone lines. I do not have the phone lines open yet. Holy smokes. What is going on? What is going on? Again, thank you all for joining us on a Monday morning, now turning into early afternoon. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports. Big Ten and the SEC are calling the shots. We're going to learn more quickly this week. They're meeting Wednesday in New Orleans. The phone lines are now open. 763-260-1333.
From
Immaculate.
Immaculate, the phone line is yours. Go ahead, sir.
Greg is feeling it today.
Yeah.
That was one of your best monologues I've seen in a long time.
Wow. Yeah, as a football fan, I don't like any of it.
I know. I can tell. I'm with you.
As a person who's been following this, none of this is a surprise. This is what the Big Ten has wanted. They're going to get what they want.
Can I push back a little bit on that before I go in? Man, there's so much to talk about, but I still say this, and I know I said a lot. A lot of this is one big open negotiation playing out in public. And when you see Dellinger with all this stuff, why do you think he has so much more information than everyone else? Because these guys are giving it to him to put out in public to have an effect. It's not to inform us. I mean, for Dellinger, that's where he makes his bread. But for them to use him in this way, it's to have an effect. And so that's just letting folks realize that, because I see a lot of fear, including with you, but especially in the chat and the talk about the breakaway stuff. I'm not in that camp, man. I think that if they wanted to really break away, they already could have. They'd be gone. We'd have something else. There'd be so many less headaches. They just would have done it. They threatened to do it in 2014 and barely got anything that they asked for, and they didn't break away. So we'll see. I could be wrong. I think that it's the threat to get what they really want, and what they really want is actually bigger than the CFP. It's governance. So it's like an art exhibit where it's about perspectives. Like there's this one piece, and then as you pull out, there's the bigger piece. The CFP, what it's as important as it is, it's part of that bigger piece. And when you hear Petitti talking about, if we get the postseason right, we can have so many more non-conference games that are meaningful. Well, that how much more does that actually get realized when you have the A4 in power creating a different postseason that includes conference postseason games, so that way the conference season leads you to your conference postseason. You can have out-of-conference games that are any kind of game, and it won't hurt your postseason chances.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate of when out-of-conference games have the most value to them, because they don't want to see themselves accidentally hurt themselves. So that I still see that, and maybe, bias, seeing this thing coming could be the case, but that's when you have the ultimate value for having big out-of-conference games, was when it doesn't hurt your chances. And you could just have, and they're almost like exhibition games, right? Like you can toy around with them, play around with them, figure yourselves out for the conference. They're like preseason games, big, huge preseason games. But, like in terms of ESPN, like you were saying, how they, what they were saying, that kind of seemed to me like it was a bit obfuscatory. Like, they do care to some degree about all the fan bases, because they have TV deals with a lot of conferences. Even though they may not be their big ones, they still spend money on them. But most of all, man, how much of their content leading up to the end of the football season is about talk shows, and it's about, it's about controversy, man. Like, that controversy sells for ESPN a lot. And if they get rid of all the at-larges and it's just all AQs, the only controversy that they have left to sell at that point is exactly what you said, and I totally agree with you. It's the way that these play-in stuffs could go bad. And so then they have to plan on that, and that's just going to make people very angry. So it's pretty easy to predict if they go down this route that everyone's talking about, with like hardly any at-larges and all AQ'd out, that there are going to be some teams that get in that everyone's just like, what are they doing there? Oh, they got that important win with the play-ins through the conference, and they got themselves in. And it's going to be hated, just like there's always something that people hate and that causes a change to happen. And if you have all the statistics and the metrics, you can predict that stuff. You can see what people are going to do. And you know that eventually something's going to happen. And these things happen every year, so I think it's almost kind of meant to implode if they do it. It's my opinion on that. Like I said, I think that this is part of a bigger picture. People think that the CFP is forever, and I kind of question it. I go, why? Why do people think that they couldn't just do away with it in the future and do something else? So I tend to look at these battles right now and say, there's a means to an end. The biggest thing coming up, and this is where you're talking about timeline, and timeline matters, and why they want to get this done in the next couple of weeks, is because April is huge. April is huge in the big picture. April is house settlement time. April is governance. They need to get everyone to vote for that still. If that was fully agreed upon, it'd be done by now. In fact, I'm shocked that we haven't actually seen that. So that tells us they don't have all the votes for it yet within the NCAA, within Division I. Because unless they're going to give them a whole new division to rule over, which might require actual, maybe congressional board, I don't know. But they're going to have to give them power over all of Division I. And that means you got to get those schools to sign on to that. And if the first decision that they're making here in this moment when they're having those negotiations is, oh, we're going to take all the AQs and you're not going to get anything more, does that really show that they're going to govern and rule over all these schools in Division I in a, I'm using kind of air quotes here, fair way? It doesn't help their argument if what they're trying to do right now is to get votes rallied for them to get governance, brother. So that's just to kind of caution and like pull back on the reins and be like, that's the big picture. And so I think what you're seeing is they're playing this fear game of like, we could do, it's the same play that they've done before. We'll break away, we'll take all the votes. or give us the governance we want and we'll do the thing that we agreed to before, which actually was 3-3, whatever, right? Like they offered that initially.
Yeah.
So they are okay with it. It's just now they've moved the measure even further. So it's like, okay, what are they asking for now that doesn't make them push for that extra amount? That's my point to make is they're now negotiating. They're bargaining. They're saying, we have the power to do this if we want to. We were okay with that, which means they would be again, but they want something else for it now. So that's my thoughts on that is I think this is part of a bigger picture, and it's not just about the CFP. It's like pull back your perspective a little bit more. Look at the big picture, what's going on coming in April. But, if they really want to do that, I think we might have to see even move on 2025 by March, right, to ensure those votes for governance. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I just wanted to kind of get that out because I'm seeing a lot of fear and with good reason. But just trying to keep in mind, like, the game these folks are at is big time and time is short. And they need to have a big effect in a short amount of time. So they're just plastering this negotiating points out in public. And everyone's having to deal with it. And maybe people aren't realizing like that's what's going on. They're in heavy duty negotiations.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the case, or do you think am I on something here?
No, I think you're right. I think we're going to get a lot of resolutions here real quick. A lot of decisions are going to be made. I think there's I always say this, there's somewhat of inertia going on where if you don't get it through the window now, you might not get it through the window. In other words, the SEC schools that want to have a ninth conference game, this is just an example, right? This is now they probably feel this is their opportunity. Get the ninth game in, get more money, get the scheduling agreement, get this automatic qualifying spot. This is all, it's got to happen now. If it doesn't happen now, it ain't going to happen. So I think a lot of this is based upon, okay, we're going to land all of our planes right now. The Big Ten, the SEC are going to make sure step by step, they land this plane, then they land that plane, then they land that plane, and pretty soon all the planes have landed for now. And it's all probably going to happen within the next couple of months.
Yeah, I think we're talking weeks at this point in time. Yeah. They've got a meeting for the CFP this month. The SEC and Big Ten are meeting. Certainly, there's going to be meetings between the P4. I know they may not be presenting that to the public, but they're trying to get the A4 empowered. So those guys are going to have to be talking a lot. They are extremely busy, and I think if we don't get an answer about the CFP here in the next 3-4 weeks, by mid-March, we won't hear anything for at least a couple months after that, because they're going to be so busy with the House situation and governance, and that it changes the situation. So yeah, I think you're going to have a whole lot of content here, brother, here for the next couple of weeks. They're going to be coming hard and heavy. Yeah. Because, just look at the effect it has on you, and it has on chat, it has on everyone. Now imagine that having on real power players, like influence peddlers. How many of them, after they read that article, are picking up the phone and calling someone at the school and saying, "Hey, this is really worrying." That's the effect to have, right? Is to cause soft power influence on people who make decisions. So I'll leave it at that, because I know you got to have a lot of guys who want to get on here, but I just wanted to get in here before I had to get out of here and say, like, hey, take a look at this, see what you think about it, and always appreciate it, though, brother. Good to see you're having these big shows again.
You got it. Appreciate it, my man. Thank you, Immaculate.
Have a good day.
Excellent. Phone lines are open, 763-260-1333, 763-260-1333. Give us a call. Look, I think we're going to see.
From
Moen.
Mr. Buckeye is on the line. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning, Greg, or good afternoon, rather.
Good morning. Well, it's still
you
morning
feeling?
here, but good afternoon to you, Mr. Ohio State Buckeye.
How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling better. Still battling the cold, but I'm not in. We're doing pretty good. I've been so busy lately, but we're doing pretty good here, and we're gonna get real busy here with college football in the next couple of weeks. Because I got a feeling that the Big Ten is going to lay out something in public here quickly after New Orleans, after their meeting, heading into Dallas the following week. What do you think, sir?
I tend to agree with you, Greg. But I wanted to call and make a point that I know a lot of people aren't happy to hear this news, but an ugly truth is always better than a beautiful lie. And we don't have to go far back in college football to be reminded of that. Remember the Pac-12 dissolution?
Yeah.
There were a lot of people peddling beautiful lies.
Yeah.
And attacking anybody and everybody who peddled an ugly truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better you just got to face the truth head on and deal with it, as opposed to, being misled or fed misnomers by so-called learned men that are just beautiful lies. So that's first and foremost. So thank you for, at least putting the ugly truth out there.
Yeah.
Secondly, I want to thank you for acknowledging that Notre Dame is 100% complicit in this.
Yes, they are.
They are right there. I know people want to paint the Big Ten and the SEC as the only villains in this room.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is standing right there beside them.
Yeah.
The fact that they get a protected playoff spot, if you can't just be mad at the Big Ten and the SEC when Notre Dame sits out there as independent and gets special preferential treatment, whereas if they would actually join a conference, they would be forced to the automatic qualifiers, just like everybody else would. So, I mean, just, I don't want to rag on Notre Dame too much. I like those guys, but I was glad to see you actually acknowledge that they are just as evil in all this as we are. If the Big Ten teams and the SEC teams are governed by greed in this model, so is Notre Dame. As for the actual proposal, we'll have to wait and see what comes out. I talked about it a little last night. I agree with Stormy Cyclone. I would like to see some kind of provision to make that fourth automatic qualifier spot conditional for a Big Ten SEC team. Just for the example you mentioned of an ACC or Big 12 team being more deserving of that number 4 Big Ten or SEC team. I don't have an issue with that. As far as the scheduling goes, Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement, I'd like to see that, but I'd like to see it involve some protected rivalries. For example, I'd like to see them bring back Oklahoma, Nebraska. I think that'd be a great out-of-conference game to have every single year.
Yeah.
Illinois, Missouri.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know this, but they had a pretty heated rivalry.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see both of them do some kind of business deal with the Big 12. Because, again, I think there's some great crossover games that we can, you're right. Things have got out of the toothpaste out of the tube, but that's the way with progress. But I don't think that having progress necessarily negates tradition. I think we can have both. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I'd like to see the SEC work out a deal where Kansas and Missouri play every year. I'd like to see the Big Ten work out a deal where Colorado and Nebraska play every year. I think there's room for all the parties here. The ACC kind of painted themselves in a corner, though. I really don't know. It's like you said, nobody. They had their moment. They came forward. They signed their extension. They kind of had to sell their soul a little bit to Notre Dame to get it done. But, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, they can't be looking at this and being happy. They're clearly looking at this right now and saying, we need to pour as much money as we possibly can into our schools in the next 5 years to make us the most attractive candidates possible for expansion by the Big Ten and the SEC. They're not gonna stick around there long term. They're not going to be there till 2036. So
no, I agree.
We'll see.
Go ahead.
We'll see. I just want to say it's great talking to you again, Greg. I'm glad you and the general are feeling better.
Yep.
And as always, no future Big Ten expansion. Let's just not expand anymore. We'll just no future Big Ten expansion.
All right.
Talk to you later, Greg.
Appreciate it, my man. Great call. Mo and Vision, Mr. Buckeye, national champions. Buckeyes, by the way. But they have a tough game, very tough game, coming up October 4th.
Call from
Numbskull News.
Numbskull News is on the line. Can you hold on for just one moment, please?
Yes, sir.
I do appreciate it. Ryan, Willie, I agree with the Immaculate. My goodness, a Badger, an evil Badger agreeing with an evil Hawkeye. The world has imploded. I agree with the Immaculate. The P2 will get Congress involved if they try to break away. Plus, who wants to see Bam and Mercer every year? In my opinion, the pack will die. Thank you, Ryan, Willie. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you once again for your generosity. I do appreciate it so very much. Numbskull News, Mr. TCU Horned Frog is on the line. What are you thinking, good sir?
Well, if I can quote the great Gary Busey from one of the greatest movies of all time, Point Break, Utah, get me 2. I will take 2 automatic qualifiers. Now, I can't speak for every Big 12 fan, obviously, but if they logically look at it and look at our viewership, we deserve 2, but I can't make a case for anything more than that as far as automatically getting that. And if there's a road to 3 on a quote-unquote immaculate type of year we may have, then cool. But, and follow my logic, because like I said, I kind of looked through this thing through the Big 12 beer goggles here. I like the idea of private equity coming into the Big 12. I also like the idea of a merger/partnership with the ACC.
Okay.
If we each have 2 automatic qualifiers, that means if we join together, we have 4 between the 2 of us. That puts us in a little different category than we're currently in. So I think that's incredibly important. And the reason I'm pushing for all this merger partnership kind of thing with the ACC, because when it comes to negotiating future media rights contracts, we have a lot more leverage at that point because we control a hell of a lot of content. None of it is Alabama. None of it is Ohio State. But still, there's only so many Alabamas and Ohio States out there. That's a rarity out there if you look at all of Division I. But if you take the next tier down, we would be a juggernaut, and that is needed content for all those media partners out there, especially, if you look at people like, Warner Brothers Discovery, who lost the NBA. They need the content. If you're a future streamer, Netflix, Amazon, whoever who wants to really increase their inventory in live sports, we would be very attractive to them. So that's, to me, as far as Jim Phillips, as far as your mark, they really have to look into the future. and not plan everything they're doing with what the SEC and the Big Ten are doing. Keep your eyes on your own paper. They're going to do what's best for their conferences. Do what's best for yours. Do what you can do. Stop doing this follow the leader bull crap. Don't worry about a breakaway or anything else, because everybody needs Congress. Everybody needs Congress to help with the revenue sharing bit.
Yeah.
So if they're all in line with that, and all four conferences, they are working together for this revenue sharing model, that tells me no one's really interested in breaking away, threat, empty threat, whatever. So do what you need to do. The Big Ten and the SEC ain't going to stop you. They don't care. They make their own money, and their money's going to increase. So increase your money. To me, the consternation of, oh my God, what the Big Ten and what the SEC are going to do, who cares? I mean, I don't care. Greg, I don't care how much money Minnesota's going to make in the future. Good for Minnesota. They're in the right conference to make this easy money. Cool. But as a Big 12 fan, I love that we don't have blue bloods. I love that we don't have to go through Texas and Oklahoma to get anywhere anymore. I like the parity of my league.
Yeah.
And there would still be great parity in a merged or partnership with the ACC. There's all kinds of great things we can do for each other. West Virginia may not have so much travel, and then they can stop griping every year about it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of excitement. I don't really have a lot of worry about where things are going. I like where things are going. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. Can anybody can people hear me when I'm talking? I see that my face has frozen, but can you guys hear Numbskull News and myself talking? We can hear it. Okay, but for some reason I completely have frozen up on the screen. Okay. Sorry about
Hopefully
that.
it's the good side of your face, Greg.
Well, I don't have a good side. I don't have a good side. It's not even my back side is my good side. All right. So I appreciate your perception on it, IMAC, Numbskull News. And I do get it. Give us the 2. We'll work on ourselves. I find the merger talk. If I had more trust in leadership, I could actually see some sort of formation between the ACC and the Big Ten. I mean, ACC and the Big 12. I could see that working out to the benefit of the institutions. But I always come up to this point. I do not know if Phillips has the cojones, the balls to be able to get something like that done. I don't know if there's some institutions in the ACC that are willing to make some sort of deals with the Big 12. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that could ever work.
Well, to me, it's either join us or fall to us, one or the other.
Oh,
that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the future there.
Yeah.
I mean, you only have to look so far as the Pac-12. When you lose your big top brands, what happens to you?
Yeah.
It's not going to be pleasant because, a school like Louisville will jump. They'll be the Colorado because they're not going to hang around for less money in that conference. That's just not going to happen for them.
Yeah.
And 2031, the Big 12 is going to get a big raise. So I'm not saying we're getting SEC or Big 10 money, but we're going to be making substantially more money. I kind of believe that Brett Yormark is going to set things up to allow that to happen. And they're still stuck in 2036. So let's figure it out together.
Yeah.
There's no need for a war between the Big 12 and the ACC. That's my feeling on it. There's always a way.
Yeah.
But if not, then it'll just be first come, first serve, later on down the road.
Yeah.
Because we'll do that too. That's fine.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like the Big 12 in this point is kind of in the catbird seat when it comes to that. So, but I think Brett Yormark has a good vision for the Big 12, and I don't think he would be opposed to something like that. Hell, it may be on his little special secret board that's hidden in his closet somewhere, where that's something they're going to look at or explore or talk to Jim Phillips about. But we'll see how it plays out. But that's kind of where I stand. That's what I hope for, because I don't want to see the ACC fade away into some G7 conference.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people value Wake Forest or Boston College, but I do. I think they're good little brands there. I think there's some value there. I'm not going to take a dump all over those schools like everyone else that, whether it's Florida State fans or other ACC fans that just don't really care about those brands. I'm not saying I'm Mother Teresa out here, but, they got some value. They can bring some value into a partnership or a merger. So because they provide Division I content. They provide Power 4 content.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do something smart here, because I think they have an opportunity to find a way. They got years now. They got a stay of execution for a little while. So let's make some good decisions.
Yep. All righty, sir. Great call, Numbskull News. I appreciate it, my man. Anything else?
Oh, that's it, man. Hey, I appreciate the show, and I'll just continue listening. I'll fade back as usual.
Numbskull News, fading back. My goodness. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, Mr. Hornfrog.
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Numbskull News legendary PATC caller.
Call from
Rock and Rant.
Rock and Rant is on the line. Mr. Hurricane, oh boy, here we go. The floor is yours.
What's going on, man? You feeling better? I take it, right?
Doing better. Doing not 100%, but we are doing better. Yep. It's cold though. It's going to be a cold week in Minnesota. I don't know what the temperature is going to be today. Tomorrow is going to get even colder. Whatever today is, tomorrow is going to just double it. But then eventually this weekend, I think we're going to have some stuff melting. But it's going to be a brutal week. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, this might be, in one hand, I feel like my most personal call in history, because it's like going to a memorial for a friend that died 6 months ago, but you're just doing it now because you finally found a fragment of DNA.
Yeah.
To identify.
Yes.
I don't really agree. Usually I agree with a lot, and I still agree with most of what Immaculate and Numbskull said, but there's a bunch I don't necessarily agree with or just have a different opinion on. I don't think that the 14 thing is a negotiating point anymore. I think that was in September when you first put it out. It's almost 6 months later, and you didn't hear a lot coming out from the ACC meetings about them really pushing back other than a token thing.
Yeah.
To me, the only hope in that not being a 14 thing is the ESPN comment, right? Of what factor of the alienation, do they have any trauma over getting dunked on over the SEC stuff? I don't know that they do. I wouldn't necessarily expect it. To me, in that whole conversation, the only salvation of what I think is a terrible dynamic, and to be clear, I'm coming at it from a perspective that I think once we hear what happens with Florida State and Clemson settling, and if some form of being able to get out with reduced costs in 2031 happens, that Miami, Florida State, Clemson are gone. But I still would have the same opinion if we were in the Big Ten today, because I think it's really crappy what they're doing.
Yeah.
As a general thing, right? I'm not being hypocritical. I'm not saying, we're above it all. I think it's crap what's being done. Earn it on the field, and you'll still get your 4 or 5, maybe even 6 in a given year. That's where I come from. But I think they have to do 16 just to avoid, and maybe that's where the finesse is coming, just to avoid the scenario you're talking about, or where Stormy said maybe there's some carve out that in these circumstances where there's 3 schools in the top 10, we don't make them get screwed out if the circumstances go. I think they have to do that, or else they're going to alienate 30 to 35% of all of the TV viewership, maybe 40% of the TV viewership. And that's where a lot of the profit margins for the networks come, right? is in that last part of the audience is where all the money is that recoups the fees. It's not just in the baseline viewership for the SEC, as big as that is, and it's definitely huge. So I think it's a kind of crappy thing. One of the things that I want to get your take on is so the whole dynamic of the conference playoff or the playing games, even there it doesn't necessarily, you're going to start doing an apples and oranges situation, right? You have all of these teams, all these conferences where nobody plays each other. There's no divisions, right? So the Big Ten could get away with their top 2 teams in the regular season, whatever convoluted tiebreakers exist, getting a bypass, and then 3 plays 7, 4 plays 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, whatever it is to get in those last 2 slots. But if you're the ACC and the Big 12, you have a very likely situation where, your team that's number 2 only is number 2 because of the 5th tiebreaker down, and because you don't have 4 slots, you only have 2. You're probably doing a play-in for just 1 game, for just one of the slots, right? Mm-hmm. And your first team gets a bye. So that's going to piss people off because they're going to find themselves eliminated because of a random scheduling quirk that they got, which we almost had in the ACC this year before Miami made it easy on everyone by blowing a couple of games where there was a possible 3-way tie where none of those teams actually played each other. And we were down to the 5th or 6th tiebreaker where it was what teams you didn't play did against everybody else. So I just think that's, kind of a bad situation. And the other thing I wanted your take on too, and then I'll pause, is I think there's a disincentive for the SEC and the Big Ten to even consider scheduling ACC and Big 12 in whatever slots they still have available in the regular season because of the optics of them possibly losing to one of those schools. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
So those are the 2 things that come to mind in all of this. It's they could still play the schools from another conference because they have less risk. But if you're worried that people are going to argue about whose strength of schedule is better, you might not want to play anybody that's not in those other conferences just to avoid those optics alongside the difference of how play-ins could work. So what is your take on how the ACC and Big 12 would do play-ins versus...
I absolutely agree. In fact, I should have mentioned that earlier. I mean, you're still going to have your South Carolina versus Clemson. You're still going to have some ACC schools playing, but the numbers are going to go down. I mean, the opportunities for the Big 12 and the ACC schools to play Big 10 and SEC schools non-conference games, they're going to go down, right? They just are. They're going to dwindle. So you're not going to be able to have this oranges versus oranges comparison because the Big 10 and the SEC will not allow it because they're going to just be in their own little universe. I agree with that. I'm just going to give an example. People are going to, well, Greg, that ain't going to happen. Well, maybe it won't, but what if? Now, you're a Miami Hurricane fan. I hope you take this in the spirit that I'm giving this example, rock and rant. But what if Clemson wins it all this year? Okay? Right. What if they do?
Yeah, they're the preseason ACC favorites, and they're going to probably be preseason top 6, if not, a little bit higher.
What if they win it all this year? Okay? What if they do? Okay, they win it all. Let's say in 2026, Miami wins it all, or Florida State wins it all. Okay? Now you're looking at a situation where we got this 4-4, 2-2, 1, blah, blah, and we've got a conference that has a couple national champions. I mean, to me, it's too... I don't have the intellect. I don't have the vocabulary. I don't have the way of phrasing it. This is too scripted to me. It's too much. The lines have been drawn now. It's too much. You can't go back from this. The Big Ten ain't going to never give up their edge. This is too much. You've already got all these advantages. Now you're instilling now you're actually putting up the wall. Not only do you have the moat, but you've drawn up the drawbridge and you're building a wall, And I see my sport that I love so dearly. I see it shrinking. Like I'm a college hockey fan, right? I'm a college hockey
Right.
fan. And there are now 60 some Division 1 college hockey programs. I'm not talking about the HCHA that people keep. Look, those don't have scholarships. We're talking Division 1 scholarship, highest level hockey competition. Every single time a university adds a Division 1 hockey program, I celebrate. Every college hockey fan out there celebrates because we know that it's great for the sport, great for opportunities. You've got a black university, Tennessee State. Tennessee State is adding Division 1 hockey. That is one of the most
Amazing.
incredible stories out there. So much more opportunities out there. So every time that happens, we celebrate it because it's so difficult to add a hockey program, Division 1 hockey program, to your university. It's very expensive. But so I celebrate that. In college football, I don't want it to shrink. I don't want this to. I don't want it to be all divided up, carved up. I see shrinkage when I see this, when I read it. There's nothing that is going to be able to contain the great value of the SEC. Fine, fantastic. There's nothing that's going to be able to contain the great value of the Big Ten. Fine, fantastic. There's nothing that's going to be able to shrink the huge gap between the Ohio State Buckeyes and my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers. It ain't happening. Fine. Next 60 years, we get clobbered. Fine. But when you start institutionalizing these divides, when you actually brick and mortar it to where now the ACC is a 2-axis conference and the SEC is 4, automatic every single year, that is where you cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube, and it scares the hell out of me. Go ahead, sir. Sorry to take.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the exact example that you referenced it because there's conference the tournaments involved, but and I don't have the stats up in front of me, but historically, if this same situation was happening, I don't know, 6 years ago, the ACC basketball conference get locked into 8 automatic bids, right?
Yeah.
But right now, they shouldn't get 8 automatic bids.
Yeah.
At all, right?
Exactly.
And the SEC is the dominant conference. You have Auburn and Alabama, 1 and 2, and there's right now organically they will probably get 10 bids without, even though they only have 1 automatic qualifier. And that's like my concern is you get something locked in. Look, realistically, because the money, it's a lot more expensive to fund a football team in this new era than a basketball team at the D1 level. It's likely that that's not going to be a situation where fundamentally the ACC or the Big 12 don't get a 3rd or 4th or 5th team playing that big ball. But like 6 months ago, nobody thought that Texas Tech was going to be the biggest spenders in the portal, right? And be able to almost lose their GM, but then say, screw you, Notre Dame, we're going to make sure he doesn't go. You have no idea what's going to happen in this era that way.
Yes.
Just let it play out. That's my overall concern. And if you talk, but the one thing we also know, right, is in the NCAA basketball tournament, you win your conference championship, you go to their thing, and you go through your conference tournament to do so, right? Even if you're the regular season winner. Here we might have, well, in the Big Ten and the SEC, the 2 teams that won the regular season, like they get to have a bye. They don't go to the conference title, and everybody else does. But like in the ACC, the top 2 teams didn't go because they only got 2 bids, and even though Clemson and Miami or Clemson and Florida State were, both should have gotten in if they were in the Big Ten in the same scenario. Well, we actually have to go to our 6th tiebreaker, and sorry, Clemson, you got to do a play-in now, and you're not comparing the same results getting into the tournament. The method's not there. Like I could see an upside in like a different scenario in that world where, there's probably some money for the G5 to do a play-in tournament amongst their champions instead from regular season to get into that 1 slot. But who the hell knows? That's just, that's my take. And like Numbskull's take, which, and you know, I love watching his show, and you guys should watch his show on his channel. It's really entertaining, whether you agree with him all the time or not. I think from a Big 12 perspective, I get the whole, and a lot of the ACC, a possible merger or agreement, don't say alliance or anything like that. It's a traumatizing thing. Makes sense, but it actually doesn't solve the biggest problem the ACC has right now, is that at least at the top level brands, perception or not, it doesn't solve for Miami, Clemson, and Florida State, maybe North Carolina, that there's going to be a 50, 60, maybe an $80 million gap. It's depending upon how this whole scheduling agreement goes, if more money comes in. For those schools who are trying to aspire for the national title, like they can't overcome that with what the Big 12 can bring, because outside of Colorado, on the TV audience side, none of the other schools are higher than those schools are from this past season or recent season. So it doesn't necessarily solve it for that. And the last thing the ACC needs to do is do another vote that eliminates, you know, what Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina want to do in a conference that's already in turmoil. If it's more about the long term of, hey, you're assuming that schools will probably leave in 2031 once settlements go, then, you know, I think it makes sense. If I'm a Big 12 guy, I do that all day, but I also go, like, which schools outside of basketball do I really care about scheduling? Because you know your Big 12 commissioner will eat Jim Phillips for lunch in a negotiation or anything like that. Like, I don't know if I would trust Jim Phillips to win a tic-tac-toe game with an intern. So I get it, but it doesn't really solve the ACC's problems in the next 3 to 5 years, I guess, is my take there.
Yeah. All right, man. Yeah, you and I are in agreement. I don't know what that means. The world.
We'll always have cheeseburgers to argue over.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes, thank God. Yes, we're definitely going to argue over that. Thank you, sir. Beautiful call, my man.
All right. Be good, man.
Yep. I mean, what if? Okay, so Rock and Rant brought up Texas Tech. Okay, so Texas Tech, great portal, a lot of money being brought in. You know, what if? You know, if you look at the last 3 years, I think if you look at the last 3 years of Texas Tech Raider football, I think the accumulation of those 3 years, while maybe a little disappointing to the fan base, I think those are the best 3 years since Mike Leach. I could be wrong on that, but whatever. So there's a lot of optimism in Lubbock, right? What if Joey McGuire gets this thing just hopping, right? What if Texas Tech finally unleashes and goes on a run and wins the Big 12? What if you have Joey McGuire and Dillingham? Just Dillingham keeps rocking and rolling at Arizona State, and they trading out Big 12 champions chips, and one of those two schools win the whole thing, the whole national championship. Now, a lot of you, well, the Big 12 sucks, blah, 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 blah. Nothing changes. What if these guys, what if McGuire and Dillingham are the real deal Holyfield? And what if those programs compete at the highest level for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years? Again, you've institutionalized this access, and I don't know. I don't know if you can roll it back. I mean, I'm old enough. I am definitely old enough to remember the emergence of Big East basketball, of Patrick Ewing, St. John's, Georgetown, Seton Hall. This emergence of Big East, they weren't one of the top. They were just a basketball conference. And then suddenly, Villanova, St. John's, Seton Hall, Georgetown, it was massive. It came out of nowhere, and it was massive in the early 80s, in the mid 80s, in the late 80s. We don't know. There may be some sort of, in the next 3 or 4 years in the ACC between Clemson and Florida State and Miami, maybe SMU keeps it going, and then you got in the Big 12, maybe a BYU, Sataki gets it back up again, and maybe these schools start battling for a national championship, and maybe one of these conferences get on a roll. A lot of you are saying no chance, no chance. Too many advantages in the Big Ten and the SEC. Yeah, you're right. A lot of advantages. And a lot of that is well-earned advantages. But when you start monkeying around with this automatic qualifiers, this automatic access, something doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't, and it's never going to. I understand all the motivations towards it. I get it. It's why we on September 9th of last year did a big live show warning everybody that the Big Ten was coming for four automatic qualifiers spots. It's why we've been talking about it for months. And I think here in the next week, in the next couple of days, I think coming out of New Orleans, I think there's going to be something in public saying this is what the Big Ten, the SEC wants. This is what they're going to present in Dallas. We're going to cover it all from now until end of the Dallas meeting, February 25th, whenever that is. We are going to be covering it. And I think we're going to get some real news, some real changes that are going to be implemented. Thank you, Ryan Willie. Per Pete Thamel, Wisconsin hired Marcus Sedberry as general manager. You know what? I think I just saw that. That was a little while ago, correct? Nick Olson, Wisconsin football, set to name Marcus Sedberry as new general manager from Badgers 247. A lot of people are breaking with that right now. Here we go. Pete Thamel. I'll put it up on the screen. Sources, Wisconsin is set to name Marcus Sedberry as football program's new general manager. He's overseen football in Wisconsin the last 3 years as a deputy athletic director. He's going to have his hands on the program's contracts, player contracts. Really exciting time across college football. A lot of general managers are being hired. They're going to have a lot of authority, a lot of responsibility, a lot of accountability towards the contracts handed out to the student athletes, to the football players. Interesting times ahead here in college football. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you, Ryan Willie, for your super chat. Thank you so much for your kindness. Once again, your generosity. I want to thank Monopoly, Rock and Rant, Gorb, Curtis, Numbskull News, Stormy Cyclone, and the Evil Badger, a very nice Evil Badger, Ryan Willie, for all of your donations. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you all joining us. We've had a big crowd today. The Big Ten and the SEC are calling the shots. They're calling the shots, and they're going to call it here in a couple days in New Orleans. I think we're going to see some public announcement on what exactly they want the 2026 playoff format to look like. And we're going to be covering every part of it here at Peek Around the Corner like we always do. Make sure before you leave, you smash the like button. If you've liked our content today, subscribe to our channel and have your notifications turned on. If there's more breaking news today, we're going to be going live once again. So keep your head on a swivel. It's going to be a very busy week here inside the studios of college football's Peek Around the Corner. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.